California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. It looked very mysterious, shrouded in clouds and fog and mist on that overcast morning. Our destination was Catalina Island, and there was definitely a feeling of excitement in the air as we approached the island. And it got even better after we landed and headed into the interior of the island by traveling a winding, twisting, narrow road. Our destination was definitely off the beaten track, but it was a place filled with colorful history. A little-known place to many, yet by just about any definition, a fine example of California's gold. We are deep in the interior of Santa Catalina Island, and boy, it is a beautiful sight out here. This is a very remote place, a place that not many people see or think of when they think of Catalina Island, but Joe, you're with the Santa Catalina Island Company, and you have brought us to this place that I think is very, well, it's very remote, it's very obscure in many ways, but it's a real, very colorful and important chapter in the island's history, isn't it?
It is. It really. We are out at El Rancho Escondido.
El Rancho Escondido, which means?
The hidden ranch.
The hidden ranch. And there it is. It is kind of hidden. Tell us a little bit about this ranch and how it ties in with the island.
The ranch was built by Philip and Helen Wrigley back in the early 30s, and it was really built as a place not only for the family to get away, but also as a way of sharing the interior of Catalina Island with all the visitors that come over. And it was a working ranch, and it was where they developed their Arabians on Catalina. And we do tours on there today, and the tours started back in 1952.
Somehow or another, I have missed these tours of the ranch. But as you said, from the very beginning, it was a working ranch. And he didn't have a bunch of nags out here either, did he?
No, he did not. He realized that after trying several different kinds and breeds of horses, he realized that the Arabian was by far the best horse for Catalina's terrain. And as far as riding and the intelligence of the Arabian. So the beauty, you've got the beauty and the intelligence all wrapped up in one horse.
So this place, El Rancho Escondido, has been here since the early 30s as a home not only for the Wrigley family, but for their famous Arabian horses as well.
That's right. And as a getaway, a place to go away from Chicago and all the business, and a place to really come and relax and hide.
Well, we're not from Chicago, we're from L.A., and it's kind of a getaway for us today, too, because that's where we're going to spend the day, right over there at the hidden ranch that's been here since the 1930s, El Rancho Escondido. As the tourists leave, we have arrived at El Rancho Escondido, and our tour guide today, well, we have hit the jackpot because she has agreed to kind of take us around and tell us a little bit of the history of this place. Blanche Wrigley Schreiner, you grew up here. Your father and mother were Philip and Helen Wrigley, who established this ranch back in the 30s. And driving out here, you told me that you were actually a part of the decision-making process as to where this was even going to be located.
Well, I was here when they decided, which was very interesting because we camped in various places around the island to find the place that they wanted to put the ranch.
Now, why do you think they chose this particular place? Because you had the whole island to choose from.
That's right. Well, they chose this place because, first of all, we camped in the canyon bottoms, and they were very cold and damp, and my dad said, well, now I know why the goats all bed down in the higher elevations. So we moved up, but we didn't want to go up too high, and so they selected this particular location.
And what was here when you chose the location? Nothing was here.
Nothing. Nothing. It was just like all these hills out here. Just nothing.
Now, when you used to come out here, what would you spend your summers? You'd come down from Chicago and spend your summers out here?
Most of the time we were here in the spring. And sometimes we'd stay for the summer, and sometimes we'd come and spend a whole summer and spring. One year we even spent one whole year here, which was heaven.
Well, but you were in the middle of nowhere when you were out here. I always think of the Wrigleys going to Catalina and frolicking in the waves and out on the ocean. You were way back here in the inland.
That's true, but we were able to get down to Little Harbor and frolic in the waves there.
You'd go down there by horseback, wouldn't you?
That's right. Tie our horses up, and then sometimes we ride them into the water, too.
Now, you and your sister would literally explore the whole island by horseback using this as your base of operation.
That's right.
How did that work? What was the schedule like?
We'd get up early in the morning, my sister and I, and we had a place where we kept our own horses, which were just grade horses, not at that point, not Arabs. And all we did was catch them, put a bridle on them, and then hop on bareback.
No saddles?
No saddles, because you're a lot safer bareback. You can't get caught up in the tack. And so, and then we just take off, and we'd have a peanut butter sandwich in our pocket, and we drink out of the streams.
And explore this whole island.
We rode all over this island.
That must have been paradise for young girls from Chicago coming to this place.
It was paradise because we were so totally free.
This is raw country out here. What would it have been like to ride through the countryside like this? There was a lot of danger and peril out there, wasn't there?
There was a lot of danger, yes. You had to worry about your horse falling. You had to worry about rattlesnakes. You had to worry about, in some of the places we rode were pretty steep. One time my mother's horse fell off a cliff. He was a horse that was not accustomed to rough terrain. And he fell off the cliff and fell down about 20 feet and caught in a tree.
Oh my God.
And so they managed to get my mother off and haul her up with ropes, and then they got the horse hauled back up. But
so
things like that can happen.
This was tough country out here.
Yes, it still is.
But for young girls on horseback, this must have just been a dream come true, to be turned loose out here and just head out every morning not knowing exactly where you were going to end up or what kind of experiences you were going to have.
That's right. It was every day was an adventure. One morning my sister and I woke up in that little house up there, and we started out the door, but the door wouldn't open. And so I said to my sister, well, climb out the window and see what's blocking our exit from this window, because we didn't want to go down the hallway and wake up my mother and father and my little brother. So she climbed out the window, and she came back, and she was laughing and laughing, and she said, Blanny, there's a buffalo lying in front of the door, and I can't get the door open. So we climbed out the window.
Now, you and your sister wouldn't ride all the way to the top of mountains like this, would you?
Yes, we did. That's Orizaba. That's the tallest mountain on the island.
So you could get your horses up to the top?
Yes. It's quite a climb, but it can be done. Now they have a road up there, but we used to just ride up the side.
So this whole area was fair game for you as far as when you'd set out in the morning.
That's right.
You could go anywhere you wanted to go.
That's right. That's right.
I'm just thinking of the juxtaposition between this sort of lifestyle that you all had when you were out here and the life that you had in Chicago.
Totally, totally different, like two different worlds.
Yeah.
In Chicago, we were very restricted, and here we were free.
Now, when I look at this building, this is an original barn, right?
No, this was built after the main ranch was finished. This was built in one weekend because my father had a lot of business friends who used to come out here, and they were always curious of what he did out here at the ranch. And so he said, well, I'll put a whole bunch of you up, and you can come out here, and you can ride horseback, and you can work and do ranch stuff. So sure enough, this barn, they had the foundation was laid, and then all these men, like Art Meyerhoff from the Meyerhoff Company, and Les Atlas, who was the originator of CBS in Chicago, and a whole bunch of other people that were heads of companies.
Barons of industry.
I guess that you'd call them that. Anyway, they came out here and they spent a weekend and they built this barn.
In one weekend?
In one weekend.
Did they know what they were doing? Obviously they did. The barn's still standing.
That's the amazing part to me, because most of them didn't have a clue what they were doing.
Now, to me, these look like pretty average run-of-the-mill bricks. But Blanche, to you, there's a whole story connected with these bricks, isn't there?
There's a big backache.
Tell us about it.
Well, my father decided that originally this was all just sand. And he decided that these should be brick walkways because the horses were less likely to slip on brick than on concrete. Plus the fact it's very difficult to get concrete here. So they laid not foundations, but they laid the outside perimeter in concrete, and then we laid all the bricks. So this particular section, my father and I laid.
You laid these yourself?
And I have never laid bricks before, but I have since. However, it's a lot of work. You put down the sand, and then you take a 2x4 or a big piece of wood and smooth it off so that it's level, and then you lay the bricks in whatever pattern you want. This is the pattern we used. I notice now they have concrete between the bricks, but we just had sand. And you lay the bricks, and then you pour sand, and then you sweep it in between the cracks.
So this would have been a project.
Oh, yeah.
Out here.
It was one project.
When you got through with this, there would be others.
That's right. There was
an endless list.
That's right. There was always a project. Everybody worked, and everybody had fun, too. But you always tried to accomplish something because, after all, this was in the progress of being built.
Mm-hmm. Now we've come into the old tack room, which has been converted into, I guess you'd call this a little mini museum called the Escondido room. It's full of all kinds of neat and beautiful things like these. Well, these were like show saddles, right?
Some of them were show saddles and some of them were working saddles. Well, I think most of these in this particular line here were show saddles, but you can notice the difference in the way the saddles are constructed. Mm-hmm. This one here, for instance, is one of the original, very old type saddles with a high cantle and a high pommel, which is a saddle horn, now called a saddle horn. This one is interesting. My dad bought this from the estate of a Mexican general whose name was General Samuel Santos.
And what is all this? These look like awards and trophies.
These are all awards and trophies that were accumulated during the time of Joe Dawkins, who was the ranch manager, and he was very much into showing Arabians in the ring to show. But in the meantime, my father had pretty well established that Arabians were a very hardy type of horse and could be used for ranch work, which is what my dad used them for.
So these Arabians were used for ranch work and also for show.
That's right.
Now for the Arabian part of the story, and another Wrigley is here. Allison, your full name is?
Allison Wrigley Rusak.
I get mixed up. There's so many Wrigleys around, but you are related how to Blanche?
Blanny is my aunt. Philip and Helen Wrigley, my grandparents had 3 kids, Blanny, Dee Dee, and Bill was my father.
And you are the latest generation of Wrigleys to be a part of this place?
Well, yes, I've been very involved, ever since I was a little girl, and now actually my kids are involved over here as well. I have 3 little boys.
So you came out here just like Blanche did and spent a lot of time growing up.
Yes, it was absolute paradise for me coming from Chicago.
Isn't that interesting that whatever the generation that's talking about it, you're all are saying the same thing, that it was this great escape, this wonderful place to come.
It really was. It was an absolutely magical place. I mean, it still is.
Yeah.
There's something when you get off the plane, the boat, or the helicopter, you just heave this wonderful sigh of relief. It's just peace.
And look who you're surrounded by right now. Now, are these Arabians?
These are Arabian horses. All 3 of these guys. I don't know if you see the third
other one
one's over
here.
there. Are mares. This one that I'm petting right now is called Helzapoppen, which is an interesting name, but she's actually descended from a Catalina mare who was born and raised here.
I was going to ask you if these Arabians, some of them might have been descendants from those original Arabians brought here.
She's one of the few horses we have left that are actually descendants of some of the original stallions.
And look how friendly they are. They just come right up to you.
Well, they're wonderful, and that's what's so great about Arabians is they really are friends. They were bred by the Bedouins in the desert to be pets, as well as great war horses. And in fact, the Bedouins prized their Arabians so much that if there was a big sandstorm and there wasn't enough room in the tent, the wife went out and the horse came in. And it was just a wonderful relationship they had with their horses.
And how did Philip Wrigley and his wife Helen get so attached to the idea of bringing Arabians to Catalina Island?
Well, in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, their neighbor had one of the first Arabian horses in the United States, and they fell in love with it. And the more they learned about the Arabians and the more they got to know them and realized their stamina and endurance and hardiness made them perfect for the rough terrain out here. So they had been interested in breeding horses on Catalina because it seemed like just a wonderful thing for people to see and to share out here. And they brought the Arabians here really to be something beautiful and strong. And they were one of the very first people in the United States who used them for anything other than just looking pretty.
Wow.
People all said, you can't take those dainty little horses in the mountains. And actually, they were bred in the desert, and they're so hardy. They did extremely well out here.
It was a perfect match.
It was a perfect match. And since the purpose of this ranch from day one was to bring people into the interior and let them experience Catalina and have something to see out here, these beautiful horses really were a wonderful draw.
So from the earliest days, this was part of the tour. Tourists would actually somehow or another get into the interior of the island and see these Arabians out here.
They came out by tour bus just like they do now, the old style buses. And back in the 60s, we were actually doing a lot of showing here at the ranch. Not here at the ranch, but we raised horses to show on the mainland. And during the off time, when they weren't on the mainland showing, they were here performing for the tourists.
Oh boy, there they go.
That's my favorite scene, is watching them run. One of the signature looks of the Arabian is when they raise their tail when they run. You can see when they start to move, their tails go up in the air.
Look.
And their ears go up. They use their tails kind of like a rudder when they're going around corners. But their ears are at attention and they're just breathtaking.
Now this is what the tourists see when they come out here today. Rain, you're out here with them in the ring. How did you get out to this place in the middle of Catalina Island?
Well, I came from Texas about 11 months ago, and I was looking for work on the island, and I happened to stop by in on the Santa Catalina Island Company, and I dropped in an application, and luckily I made it out here.
So you knew about horses growing up in Texas.
Yes, sir, I did.
But you had no idea that there was an opportunity like this on Catalina Island. You didn't come here looking for a job on a ranch.
Not at all. This is the last thing I expected to be doing in California, especially on an island.
Were you surprised? Obviously.
Yes, sir, I was. But it's great. I should really be paying to live and work out here.
So you live here?
Yes, sir, I do. I am a ranch hand for El Rancho Escondido. They do allow me to stay in the bunkhouse with my family, and I get to work, and I get to work with these beautiful horses on a daily basis. So it is a very unique experience.
This has got to be paradise for you out here.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And do you have a real sense of the history of this place yet? And
actually, this is the first place I've ever lived in my life that the history has been very interesting to me anyways. I learn, just like all the tourists, I learn on a daily basis something new about the ranch, something new about the island itself, and it's very unique. It's very interesting.
I have a feeling you may be here for a while.
I hope so. I do hope so.
Sarah, you're the ranch manager.
Yes.
Now, have you got a story that can top Rain's as far as how you got here and what this is all about for you?
Well, I just came here to originally volunteer to learn all about the horses, and I absolutely fell in love with the Arabian horse, and I've been here ever since, learning on a daily basis and just enjoying life.
So you're living out here in paradise as well.
Oh, yeah.
Here they go. Now, how do you get them going like this, and what's the idea?
Now, like Sarah said, they do know their jobs out here on the ranch, and now when they see the white bucket and they hear the noise, they know if they do something for it, that they're going to get something after the tour. And now that's kind of what keeps them in line, as well as them being so smart and so personable and so well behaved, and they're brought up, and they do this on a daily basis. They're better at it than we are.
Wow, this is amazing, and the way they move, and they can stop on a dime too.
Yes, sir. The Arabian horse excels in many different areas of the horse stuff, but this ranch, I do believe, was started for cutting horses back in the 30s, so they are very, very good cutting horses.
So what do you mean by cutting horses?
Cutting horses are horses that are used to round up cattle. I mean, and now it's a sport that you do in an arena. The cattle run around, and the horses can keep the one cow from rejoining the herd. So they're very agile, and they turn right and left just as fast as a cow can.
Look how they stop on a dime.
Yes.
And then follow right up next to the fence, too.
They are, as Rain said, they're very agile, which makes them very good on the trail. We have a lot of little narrow trails, as I was saying, and sometimes if you can't hack your way through and you can't go forward, you have to back down these little narrow trails on the side of a cliff, and these guys are perfect for that
So they
sort of
were perfect for Catalina.
And they do love doing this. They're also hams. They really enjoy performing for people. So
Yeah, I noticed we were here earlier for one of the tours, and they loved showing off.
They just love to have people admiring them.
And look, they
Don't you,
come
girls?
right over there,
Yeah.
very curious.
Yeah, they are, and very loving and kind-hearted. They can be some of your very best friends in the world.
Boy, they
Pretty
get all
girl.
fired up running, though, don't they?
Well, that's one of the things, the characteristics of the Arabian horse, in addition to the dish-faced, which you can see right there. Their nostrils flare very wide when they run, which allows them to take in more oxygen than your average horse. And one of the poetic sayings the Bedouins had was they called them drinkers of the wind. And that's exactly what they are. So you can see that example right
Why
here.
am I thinking that Arabian horses were white horses?
Well, because the Arabs tried to breed the colors that would work best in the desert. And for that reason, black horses are very rare, black Arabians, because they absorb the heat. And white Arabians are actually gray. If you look at their muzzle and their points, you can see that they're gray. There aren't really any albino horses, but the light-colored horses did better in the desert because of the heat. So that's why you see a lot of so-called white Arabians.
Were Wrigley Arabians from Catalina Island kind of known in horse circles?
Yes, they were, and that was because of the showing that we did on the mainland, and they won a lot of trophies, a lot of ribbons, which you can see on display in the tack room over there.
And how would you get them from the island to the horse shows on the mainland?
Well, that was what made it so tricky to compete and to stay abreast of everything, was they had to be put in a trailer here and then trailered down that long, steep road that you just came up. And then they were put on a barge in Avalon, and then they went across the channel for 4 hours on a barge, usually in the middle of the night because that's when it's the calmest. And then they were taken off the barge in their truck and trucked to wherever the show was, whether it was Arizona or Oklahoma.
So it
or
was
whatever.
a big deal just to get them there.
It was a very long trip and complicated by the fact that horses can't get seasick.
What?
They can get seasick, but they have no muscles to throw up. So when they get seasick, it's a big problem in their stomachs, and it can cause them to colic and die. So it's very, very tricky transporting them by ocean. But they were strong horses, and they used to go over there and have a few extra days to recuperate, and then they could compete with the best of them.
And then come back home to Catalina.
Come back home to Catalina. So it was quite an adventure for them.
Well, this is just about as beautiful as it gets. Our day here at El Rancho Escondido, the hidden ranch here on Catalina Island. And as we end this day, I'd like to thank the Wrigley family for sharing their stories with us about what it was like to grow up here. This wonderful hidden ranch is still here. The ranch is here, the horses are here, the family is here, and the wonderful thing about it is that today, all of this is available for people to see for themselves. That's part of the joy of it, isn't it, Allison? That people can actually come, and this is a very hands-on experience.
It's wonderful, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place to experience. So.
It is a beautiful place. It's part of Catalina history, Wrigley family history, and California history. El Rancho Escondido, the hidden ranch, a ranch that is very much a part of California's gold. Goodbye, everybody. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed our visit to El Rancho Escondido. And if you'd like to go on this adventure again, share it with family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library. It's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.